along with
Roy Piskadlo.
how you doing today? It is July 31st. It's been a very hot July, and this is the Battle Station, where we talk about all things political, social, cultural, and anything else you want to talk about. Roy, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. Nice warm day.
Very warm. We have a lot to talk about. There's a lot that's been happening in the news. And I want to remind everyone that this is a call-in radio show, and I wish Dwayne had put the number up there again because I forgot it, but I'll give that out in a minute. It's a live call-in show, so feel free to call in. We'll be posting that number on the screen and then also relaying it to you. So I think we want to start, Roy, with Kamala Harris. What do you think? That she's suddenly gone from this unelectable person that didn't receive any votes in the 2020 primary, and the truth were to be told, she didn't receive any votes in this primary either. Rather, she took all Biden's. I'm sure that they didn't get all 14 million people's approval when they did that, the people that voted for Biden and are now disenfranchised because it's Kamala Harris that's going to be apparently their presumptive nominee. It's a bad deal
You know what I think is interesting is I have not heard very many people who voted in the Democrat primary actually complain, or at least the mainstream media has not been broadcasting those complaints of people if they do exist.
Well, the mainstream media wouldn't, because now it's the Kamala Harris narrative, and
I agree that obviously that's why they probably wouldn't do it. But I haven't even heard it on, say, conservative media, on like the conservative podcasters or Fox News. And what I find really interesting about it is this is the party that talks about our democracy, threatening our democracy. You're going to end democracy, and yet they pulled a coup.
They really did
on Biden. They forced him out. Not that I like the man, but completely undemocratic ways. And then they installed another guy, or lady rather.
No, I think she's a guy.
They installed another person, and everybody's got to like it or leave it. It really truly is amazing.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they have another trick up their sleeve with this convention that's coming up, although I hear it's all going to be done over Zoom.
It's all going to be done over Zoom on a roll call. I think there's two reasons for that. One is they need to comfortably make the deadline in order to make sure that Kamala gets on all the ballots across all 50 states and the various territories. So that's one. And then two, I think that she's worried about Obama pulling another coup and shoving her aside.
Even though he came out and openly endorsed her.
That was all theater. We know that.
Well, it's all theater, but
it's all theater. It is very interesting to hear these guys, just go democracy, and then they take the guy out. And the other interesting,
they're tyrants. Actually, they're all really tyrants, and so is Kamala Harris. I mean, she is a Marxist. She's a tyrant. She was labeled the single most liberal senator in the Senate, more so than Bernie Sanders. We hear.
Yeah, I mean, if honestly, if I had to pick between the two, like one or the other being president, leaving aside Joe's dementia and cognitive issues, policy-wise and everything, I'd rather have Joe than Kamala. Seriously.
I think you're probably right. Yeah.
Because she is way left of that guy. She's left to Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, she is. And she's promised to take away all our guns by executive order, mandatory buyback. This is ridiculous. That will never happen. I can promise you that.
And and the other part that I find interesting is how it all came about, because Joe did not want to leave.
No,
I think it's interesting that the debate clearly appears to have been a setup. Like somebody goaded Biden into like saying, oh, I can take on that guy and show that he's cognitively with it. So he stepped up for a debate, but that allowed the Democrat Party to set him up. And you could see the flip in the press. Like they went from Joe was like, Joe's all with it. He's never been smarter and more on his game to he's got to go. He's got problems.
And not just one, but every
all
single
one of those guys.
media.
And it was with the same words.
Isn't that amazing? And they've been doing that for years.
Mm-hmm.
The way I've always looked at that is there's some person somewhere or group of people, a little mini think tank that every morning they come out with a talking point. Okay, use this word. And the one I was hearing yesterday was weird.
Did you hear that weird. One? Yeah, there were. It was across MSNBC, CNN.
Every single, like, except Fox
saying that JD Vance is weird.
Everything was weird. Trump was weird. The relationship was weird. JD Vance was weird. So all of a sudden, yesterday, on every single one of these media outlets, everything was weird about the Republican Party and Trump and Vance and weird.
But so you go into the weekend that Sunday that he quit, and I guess I heard that Obama called him Sunday morning, said, Joe, you got to step down. There's two ways we can do it. You got to go voluntarily, or it's going to be the 25th Amendment, and Kamala and the cabinet are going to support it.
That's likely what happened.
And that raises a very, very interesting conversation. I didn't see the whole interview, but Tucker Carlson interviewed Mike Lee, and Carlson asked that question, isn't that illegal? And what was interesting, and I really like listening to Mike Lee because he kind of lays it out very logically. He talks about, okay, suppose that Biden really is cognitively impaired, and we all know that he is. But if he is, and he resigned or decided to not run for that reason, then shouldn't he be taken out of the presidency as well?
Absolutely.
Right. And then
do it the easy way or the hard way.
Yep. And you saw what we did to Trump. Yep, I agree. And then that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is if he's not cognitively impaired and the 25th Amendment should not be invoked, then what Obama did and these other guys did was extortion. And it was just like Dwayne said in our chat, you saw what we did to Trump, meaning that they're gonna it's all lawfare. It's all they're all going after him, and it really is amazing. I never thought that our country would be like this. That's not the way I was brought up to think.
It's beyond words to me what's happening. Up is down, left is right. It's okay to even in the Olympics, Roy, yesterday. First of all, what happened with the opening ceremony, that's a whole nother story, and we can get to that later, talk about it if you want.
I'm not watching it in large part because of that.
Okay, and
I like the games. I really like the games, but I'm just like.
To that point, are we punishing the networks, the French IOC committee, Olympic committee, or should we support the athletes because they worked so hard to get there and they really had nothing to? I think that's a personal decision you have to make.
But my watching it isn't necessarily going to change. Their performance right now, just going and winning at the game or competing at the game, I think is enough. And unfortunately, I think the French Olympic Committee and the International Olympic Committee ruined it for those people by doing what they did.
And it was more than one thing. The thing with the Last Supper is over the top.
Yes, it was.
And then I didn't see it.
I did not see it. I saw some snapshots, but
we actually, my wife and I, turned it off after the menage a trois thing.
Oh, really?
Did you see that?
No. You guys went.
We're sitting there watching the opening ceremonies, and it was quite beautiful and unique.
The theater.
They were floating the athletes down the Seine River on boats, which was very different, unusual, cool. But then they would have these scenes of weird things that had no connection to the Olympics that I could tell. One was of a man and a woman dressed very oddly in a library. They were the only two in the library, and they started looking at each other provocatively. And all of a sudden, a third person, a man, comes into the scene, and he starts looking at both of them provocatively, and they look back at him provocatively, and it goes through a whole iteration of things to where they're all walking into a bedroom together, and when the guy shuts the door, he winks at the
crowd, the audience.
They were doing a menage a trois.
Yeah.
And it's like, what in the hell are they doing?
Right there, to me,
that's when we
like
turned
the
it
athletes. Off. The athletes just don't need that.
It has nothing to do with the athlete. Nothing.
So something else that happened just in the last few days were the elections in Venezuela.
Yeah.
And, actually, the audience may not know this, but the actual technology that is used in the election is by a company called Smartmatic.
Oh, you're kidding.
No. And that
explain
company,
what that is.
One of the original investors in that company was a gentleman by the name of Hugo Chavez, who is the socialist dictator that was there before Maduro. And then...
But there's no tie there, is there, Roy?
No, there's nothing. That's a conspiracy theory to even suggest that. But so, for people who aren't following, so they had the election and the exit poll, and I don't know whether I believe the exit poll, but Maduro lost by 40 points, according to the exit poll. And then when they announced the results of the election, and everything is done electronically. So the voting machines, there's no handwritten ballots, no nothing. So there's no pieces of paper. There's no way to do an audit trail except to look in the hard drive of the computer, and you're not allowed to do that.
Of course not.
So
just like here.
People push. Well, we at least have paper ballots, but they push the buttons on the screen, and that's how they cast their ballot. And so Maduro reportedly won by 10 points instead of losing by 40, and it's still just going off huge riots and so on. And the government, the Venezuelan government, just arrested their opposition. Where have we seen that? Gosh, I don't know.
No.
Where have we seen that? Oh, and get this. Anthony Blinken, who is the head of the State Department, do you know what he said?
No, I don't.
He said he called out the election fraud that occurred in Venezuela. Can you believe it?
Yes, I can believe that.
Can you believe
I
that?
can believe you did that.
But it does get better, and this is actually the white pill part of it. I think the president of Ecuador and the president of Argentina both called it out and said the election was a fraud, and we're not going to recognize it.
Wow.
They actually said that.
I heard Biden called too. Biden called too. You know what he said?
He said,
I don't mean to make fun of people with dementia. I'm making fun of Biden, but he said that.
Did he actually say something?
He said, well, kind of that. And they went, whoa.
Whoa. Well, I thought he would have called and said, dude, can you give me tips? How did you do that?
He said, if you don't give me $5 million, I'm going to withhold that funding. That's what he said. Anyway, we're kind of all over the place today. We're kind of getting back in the swing of things. And by the way, this is a call-in show, live call-in, and I want to give that number out. And then, Roy, I want to run through what we've been doing
Because there's been
with
some
our
exciting,
elections here.
exciting developments, and we need the help of the audience.
We do. So live call in, we can talk about anything. So feel free to interrupt us when we open the lines up. But the number is 385-899-2134. We'll talk about anything. We'll probably open the phone lines up here in about 20 or 30 minutes, something like that. But key your phone up and give us a call. And also, this is KMMU, Main Street Media Utah.com. And you can get to us by going to Rumble at KMMU, X at KMMU, and also search for us on YouTube, KMMU. So
KMMU.org.
Yeah, that actually goes right to the website, KMMU.org. So you can access us that way live, and or you can watch us later anytime you want. Once Dwayne posts them, which is usually pretty quick, a day or two. So I lost my primary election. No surprise there. Roy is still will be on the general ballot for House District 41 in Cottonwood Heights, and he's going to need some canvassers. You're going to be coming out with a website soon where hopefully you'll
So everybody, if in case we were
now.
disconnected, we're back on. We're having some internet
So where
problems.
did you guys go? You
See,
disappeared.
there you go. We were gone for a second, but we're back.
You're back. Cool. Okay.
Yeah, so we were talking about Roy's election, that you're going to be finishing up a website for him, and that we're going to have a donate button on there, because these things cost money. I mean, if you even go get yard signs, you're talking about for 100, it's $800.
I was talking to some of some of the other House District Republicans running, for example, adjacent to us, which is we're in House District 41, and Clint is in House District 42, and he's budgeting. Well, he budgeted for actually going back to his primary.
Yeah, he went through caucus and primary.
Yeah, and even that that race cost $20,000.
I know.
$20,000. That's huge.
Yeah, my state Senate race, both of my opponents were in the $100,000 range.
So Amber Shield was one of your opponents, and Scott Cuthbertson was the other.
Right.
Last I saw, Amber was right around $100,000, right?
That's
she
right.
gone up from there?
I've not looked since after the election. She's out of it.
So. I know she's out of it, but what about Scott?
I've not looked since
the
primary.
Thought when at the primary he was around 60.
Yeah, I think it was actually a little bit more than that, and his war chest was building to shy of 100. One that made it through, and I would love to find out if he did it legitimately, but we'll get there on that. But anyway, Roy's going to need some money. When do you have a domain picked out yet? And
yes, it's Roy for Utah. That's pretty creative.
Roy4Utah.com.
Yes, Roy, the number 4 Utah.com, and that's where the website's going to be, and the email address for me, yours truly, is going to be roy@roy4utah.com.
Excellent.
And if you're nice to me, I'll get you an email address that says steve@roy4utah.com.
I think I could probably do without that, but I am willing to give you a few bucks, and I am willing to go knock on a few doors for Roy.
And you got those sign stands,
And I'll
which
give
is
you
actually
my.
a big deal.
Those things cost $1.50 a piece.
I know, it's a big deal.
And
It's a
I
big
actually went
deal.
and retrieved as many as I could find. So,
But when talking with House District candidates, I mean, the number one campaign strategy is knocking on doors and getting a lot of people to knock on doors and put out material and so on. And it's a direct connection. That's,
okay.
I'm just telling you what they're
Okay.
telling me. I mean, and
I'm just saying I was king of door knocking, and I'm okay. Let's take cheating out of the equation. They do cheat. I do.
both Democrats and Republicans.
Yes, they really do.
Mm-hmm.
So taking everything like that out of the equation, getting face to face with people is a great thing. The problem is when you have such a huge area,
It's
you
so
can't
hard.
do it. You spend months every night going, and then people don't answer their door. So I discovered the best thing to do is just leave literature,
Mm-hmm.
because you'll talk to one person, they'll consume all of your time. This is just the reality. I'm not saying it shouldn't be that you talk to everyone. I wish
But
you
it's
could.
also if somebody is going to actually start a conversation with you, the fact that they want to have a conversation with you that goes more than 15 or 20 minutes, they're engaged, and
They're engaged, but when you're talking about thousands of votes,
I know it's super time consuming.
And then I've also had people say, I kept you here because I don't want to vote for you, and it's less time that you'll have.
You actually
I've had people say that to me.
That's
I've
nice.
actually had people say that to me.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, they said
That's taking a
that's a
bullet.
strategy, is like consuming your time, so you'll go to less stores.
That's
They
unbelievable.
devise, if there's a way to cheat, if there's a way to game the system, people have probably thought of it.
Mm-hmm.
One lady invited me in for a glass of water, sat me down on her sofa. It was very nice. And, you don't want to be rude and say, hey, I've got 6,000 other doors to get to. So you go in, you talk. And she said, oh, by the way, I'm not going to vote for you, but I wanted to consume your time. It's like, you've got to be kidding me, lady.
Did you say that to her?
No, I thought that. It's like, see ya. You can't go off on them.
No, you can't.
So
they're just weird.
Well, you
people.
can, but that doesn't
get you anywhere.
No, get you arrested.
Yeah, particularly it would.
So think about volunteering a couple of evenings, afternoon for Roy to canvass a part of a precinct. It's not that hard. We'll get him some literature and set it on their doorstep. Knock if you want, but otherwise just get Roy's information on people's doorsteps is a big deal. And it's super expensive to do mailers. So
and they're actually not as effective, because a lot of people, I don't know about you, but I get the stuff out of my mailbox and I just go, just throw the.
And most people do that. They really do. And in the primary, less people are paying attention. They'll pay more attention in the general, because the primary turnout is generally not very good. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately in Utah, this is where we pick the eventual winner, 90% of the time.
Well, not in this district, unfortunately. I mean, this House district, Galen Benyon is my competitor. She's a very nice lady. She's very much into climate-focused policies, and
Dwayne, are we there? We may have lost the connection again.
Oh, he's back. So we just disappeared again.
You guys keep dropping out. It seems to be some kind of a bandwidth issue, but keep going.
Yeah.
You're back. You're good.
So what I was saying was 20% of the people in our neighborhood, our House District 41, are registered Republicans.
Only 20?
40.
40.
40%. 20% are registered Democrats, and 40% are other, like everything else.
I would focus on the other if I were you.
Well, I'm definitely going to be focusing on the other, but actually, as part of what the Republican Party wants to do here in general, which I think I can dovetail very nicely with the House Republicans, the precinct chairs here, is they really just want to get the vote out and get the Republicans voting from the top of the ticket all the way down. So that's going to be the strategy, is working with all the precinct chairs and working with anybody else who will step up and help push this thing. So push my campaign, as well as all the other people that are like Dee Theodore is in our district. I mean, those are the people that we got to vote for. So.
Yeah. Okay. So both Roy and I really ran for office and are running for office because we see so much that is wrong with our society right now, and all the things that are going on, and even what the laws that the legislature here are passing, and election laws that are insane. I'm telling you, our election code is now 473 pages long, the 2024 version. And you add in the Title 63 codes and other statutes that it refers to, we're at 700 plus pages of documents and laws just related to our elections. If you read through it, brutal to read through it, but it's cumbersome, it's contradictory, it's geared solely to protect the data and the individuals that are running our elections at the highest level. You can't access the required data to do a real certification of our elections. It's just not available. We have here in Utah what's called a withheld category that no other state in the union has. And this is literally a category where even our board of canvassers,
we're supposed to certify our elections,
which is the county council and commission acting as the board of canvassers during election time, where they are supposed to certify our elections. Certify means to actually look at it and make sure that we are getting free and fair elections, but they can't do that. Just with the withheld category alone, here in Salt Lake County, that category of voters is over 33%. And this is straight from the mouth of Salt Lake City GOP Chair Chris Knoll. If you want to talk about a red flag, that's it. Why in the world would you have a category so big other than to cheat? There is simply no other explanation. I get it if you don't want, a convict coming after a judge that sentences him, or a police officer to protect their identity, or a battered woman or man for that matter. But that's less than 2% of the voting population. And we are now at over 33% in Salt Lake County, and it's higher in other counties. It's in place to hide cheating. There's no other explanation for it. And we are determined to uncover not necessarily the withholding category, but as an end goal, we want to get rid of that entirely. I believe we need to totally rewrite our election code from scratch. But Roy, we understand that's not going to happen right now. What we want to do and what we're trying to do is show voter, or not voter
Election.
fraud, but election fraud that is systemic, not from an individual mom or pop, brother or sister that happens to get a ballot that perhaps a sister or a son, daughter moved away and they voted. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for systemic voter fraud and quite frankly, identity theft, where within the system of voters, we are able to recognize and spot people that have died and continue to vote, people that have moved out of state.
And not only do they continue to vote, but they continue to vote unbeknownst to the next of kin.
Yeah, that brings me to a good point. We've been researching it. Many of you are part of our team that are helping us do this. This Saturday, we were able to, well, why don't you explain a little about who we're using? Well, no, because that could go totally sideways.
Yeah,
Let me just get to what happened this weekend. We were able to identify an individual that had been voting, that the record showed that he died in 2012.
Yeah, he voted in 2020, 2022.
Every year that
Every
we
year.
had records since 2004
Right.
in every single election.
Mhm.
And
In Utah.
in Utah. So through our system with Dwayne's help and other people's help using databases and data searches that I won't get into at the moment, we were able to distill it down to a handful of people. I think it was 376. And from there, we did some hand research. And I, over the weekend, able to identify 15 cases of potential fraud where the record showed that these people are voting, and
Yet they did.
yet they've been dead for several years in most cases. So one of them was over here in Holiday. I went over to the home. The individual was not home. I left a note with my card, asked him to call me back, which he did later that day. I told him that it looks like, he said he was the homeowner. And by the way, one of the ways I'm doing this is they don't give you like the phone number of the people, they give you an address. So I use the tax assessor's website to plug in the address, which we have in the voter rolls, to see who lived at that address. And it was the son of, it had the same last name, the son of the person in question that our records show died. He confirmed that his father did die in 2012, but he also told me that his father moved to Arizona in 2005. So not only was he voting as a dead person, he was voting in Utah as an Arizona resident since 2005 in every single election. So there was two ways that fraud was being committed at a minimum here: voting as an out-of-state resident and voting dead. Now, obviously, you can't do that. And I'll add that the son was livid that somebody would take advantage of his dead father and basically steal his identity and be voting for him for what's now 19 years. First the change of address problem, and then
didn't you
both.
tell me that the gentleman moved to Maricopa County?
The
Arizona?
Gentleman that died, the father of the gentleman I talked to, had moved to Maricopa County, Arizona, and he was actually active in doing, with the Republican Party down there in this case, and voting down there. So this individual, the son, is going to provide me the death certificate for his father. And he's also going to provide me the information that he has been living in Arizona since 2005, which can include, tax property tax records, utility bills, all different kinds of ways to show. And he can also get the information that he's been voting down there. So
yeah, we know people who are running similar efforts in Arizona, and when we find people who have moved from Utah but still voting here, and they move to, say, Arizona or Oregon or Oklahoma, whatever, we say, okay, this person has moved. They've moved to another state. There's a central organization called Cause of America. Cause of America is being supported by Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy. And then in turn, Cause of America is then pushing resources down to every state. And so they come to us with people that have moved from their state to Utah and say, this person has voted, and vice versa. We can go turn around and, because what we want to do is be able to show that this person was voting in that state as well, in Arizona in this case. This whole process is like looking for needles in a haystack. It's very, 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 very tedious and obviously very data intensive. And that's why, fortunately, the guy who's supporting this webcast right now, Dwayne, the man behind the curtain here, has been helping us with the data. So for people out there that are used to using spreadsheets to handle data, we end up with files for like just the state of Utah, or just even Salt Lake County by itself, that are hundreds and hundreds of megabytes for just one spreadsheet. And for the state of Utah, it's just the data set is just too big. So the data set that we have is, for Steve mentioned earlier, there's 3 categories of voters, or 3 categories of voters on the voter rolls. One is public. That's what mine is. Another one is private. Private are individuals whose identity can only be revealed rather to candidates or party officials, either Democrat or Republican Party or any other official party. And then there's withheld, and withheld is supposed to be just a small number of people, which is like judges, sheriffs, people who have restraining orders for people who are committing violence. They want to vote, they want to register to vote, but they don't want somebody to go in, get the voter rolls, and then look for that person in the voter rolls and then find their address and be able to go after them.
And as someone, Roy, that has actually read the election code, you have to meet certain criteria to get into that category. You can't just automatically get in it. You have to meet certain criteria. You have to fall into those categories to be placed into the withheld category. I mean, you have to be a judge. You have to be a police officer. You have to show
A
restraining order of some sort, a judge order, a court order. You can't just register and say, I want to be withheld because I want to be withheld. But that's what's happening. And that's how come the voter rolls, it's one way the voter rolls have such a high percentage of withheld now. A lot of it, I believe, are voters that don't even exist. I believe that they're phantom voters. When we deduce by simple mathematics how many people would be in that category, I think they make up voters. It's been, and then they use them, inflate the voter rolls, and then deflate them after the elections, and those people don't actually exist. And if you can't go look for them, how are you going to know that?
Exactly. So Dwayne reminds us that there are 2 million voters on registered voters in Utah out of 3.3 million residents. And so when we are doing these searches, so for each voter, we have their voter ID, first, middle, and last name, their address. In some cases, we have emails and phone numbers. And then
very, very rare cases.
Very, very rare. But then what's most important is we know whether they voted or not in each election going back to close to 2000 and up to the first quarter, the primary in 2024.
Right.
And in some cases we have the birth date, which is very helpful.
I want to interject a little right there. We've actually received. It's really important when you receive the database or the voter rolls, which day. It's like a snapshot in time because they're changing daily. And what we have is Roy provided a copy, and then we had 3 other people provide copies of voter roll data that's all a little bit different. And one of the things that Dwayne is doing is by voter ID number and other means, trying to mold all that into one data set, if you will.
There's one thing that you skipped over that I think is really important. The database, when you say like on an election day, any federal election, the county clerk who runs the election is supposed to keep the data that was generated and used in that election. What does that mean? That means all the voter rolls. That means all the images of the hard disks on the machines that were being used. It's the paper ballots have got to be stored. The envelopes, the outer envelopes have got to be stored. All of that's going to be stored and kept for 22 months. Okay, and there's 2 things that are kind of odd about that. First, as you mentioned, the actual database itself of voters changes over time.
Yes,
so you cannot go to the county clerk and say, show me the voter rolls that existed on November 3rd, 2020.
Right.
Can't show it to you.
No.
Okay, because they're constantly changing, and you can't. They don't keep track.
Well,
of
it's
it.
like a snapshot in time. Whenever they decide to pull that file and give it to you, it's going to be what it is that at that instant, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. And then the second thing that's interesting, and therein lies one of the problems is that they're breaking the law. These clerks are breaking the law, and they don't even realize that they're breaking the law.
Well, that's part of the problem with the election system altogether. If you have an election code that is, I stated, 473 pages long, very boring, very contradictory, very convoluted, how are you going to know? And then referring to other documents that it's all legalese, how are you going to know what you're supposed to do, what you can do, what you can't do? It would be virtually impossible to do that. And for those of you that don't know, Roy and I, prior to this endeavor, actually thought we could change the way our elections ran by working within the system.
That's because we're very naive.
We're naive, but we're getting naiveless.
Going the other way.
Not so naive. So we actually went to 25 of Utah's 29 counties, spoke to Board of Canvass members, county clerks, tried to put legislation together, talked to state legislators. That's a quick version of it. The fact of the matter is, those in the system right now don't know what they're doing, and those in charge don't want to change the system.
And why is that, Steve?
It's because they cheat. Not all of them, but many of them. And many of them are threatened if they do rock the boat too much. Just
threatening.
Just ask Steve Christiansen and Phil Lyman about that. Okay? They'll tell you the truth. As we are. Hey, I think we should open up the phone lines and we'll just keep talking in the meantime. This is KMMU. You can reach us, kmmu.org. MainStreetMediaUtah.com. Go to Twitter and search for KMMU. Same with YouTube and same with Rumble. So our number here is 385-899-2134.
Your lonely call screener is standing by waiting to take your call. That would be me.
The guy behind the curtain, Dwayne,
Our
is
lovely calls.
now. I had a text message, Dwayne, that said they couldn't get on. Are we still having trouble?
Nope, everything is working fine. They may have called before I opened up the call.
No, they didn't call. They just couldn't reach us. I couldn't get on the podcast at all.
The website.
I show it live on Rumble, on X, and on YouTube, and on our website. It's there.
Okay, well, we should be good to go then. And so I'll give that number out one more time, 385-899-2134. We'd appreciate any of you giving us a call. We'd love to chat with you. We're talking about our elections at the moment and what we're trying to do to fix them, but we're willing to talk about any topic somewhat politically or socially, culturally related. We know almost everything, so bring it on. Kidding.
So coming back to this, I mean, one of the things that Dwayne is doing for us, because you end up with just so much data that it's easy to, not be able to see the forest for the trees. And so what Dwayne has been doing is pulling the data into what is called a database. It's not a spreadsheet; it's a database, and that allows
an industrial strength database. We're using SQL Server.
Something that big Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies would be using. And with that, we're able to actually sort the data and look for patterns. And these are all things that Steve and I have learned and Dwayne as we've been going to try and search and talking with other people. And one of the things that we did is actually look for dead people. I didn't know this, but kind of makes sense. When anybody passes away, we all every citizen has a social security number. And when that person passes away,
even illegals now, I hear.
Yeah, even
but
illegals,
that's a side point.
That's a side point.
Yeah.
So when that person passes away, either a coroner or a mortuary or the hospital or somebody writes up a death certificate or basically a death notice, a report, sends it into the state government, which then files it with the federal government. Because you can imagine what they would want, the Social Security Administration wants to do is anybody who's died, they want to make sure that those benefits don't get paid out to that Social Security number. So they keep all this information. And we can actually search for people that have died on that database. So one of the first things that we did was we sorted all the people in 2020 from the data set that I have,
in Salt Lake County,
just in Salt Lake County, and asked, everybody who is 80 years old and older on November 3rd, 2020. And then we submitted that to the federal government database and asked the question, is this person alive or dead? And, we got back a couple thousand, I think it was 3,000, I think, out of that 2,000, 2,500. Out of that 20,000. So about 10%, 12% of the total people that were 80 and above. Now it seems kind of light to me. I would have thought that it would have been a little bit heavier because 80 and above, and this includes people who were on the database that were like 210 years old. Or not, that's a different category, but 110 years old. And that's probably an error in their birth date, but there still were quite a few that were over 100, and you would just figure that those people would be passing away at a little bit higher rate. But nonetheless, we found those dead people, and unfortunately, the federal government doesn't tell us when they died. They just told us if they're alive or dead. And that's a problem, because then in order to really make a positive match, we've got to find out when they died, because the federal government doesn't tell us that. So we have to do searches on things like Find a Grave and Ancestry.com and all these other databases. And we try to automate that to look for obituaries. We've got one person who's volunteered, and he's going to write a chat GPT program to go out and search the entire web, which would include newspapers and everything, to just see if you can, get a hit. And then once we find that, we have a date that they die if we find a positive match. And then Dwayne sorts the database for us again. And they say, when did the person die? And we have their voter history. And we say, did they vote after that death date? And that's how we've been finding people. And then Steve has taken it upon himself to go out and knock on those doors. The one gentleman that you mentioned that was in Arizona, one of our volunteers found that person by hand.
That's right.
And what we did didn't kick it up.
No, it didn't.
It didn't find it.
So no system is perfect. That's what that tells us. That
it is, and it pointed out the weaknesses in our data searches that we were paying money for them, and we're going to fix that, but it's going to cost us more money.
And by the way, I will add, and I hope that we have some listeners here. This stuff isn't free. It's not free. We have to pay money for these data searches. Roy and I have been footing the bill for that so far.
And Dwayne's been putting in a shit ton of time.
Can you say shit on this? Okay.
I think we can.
All right.
Because it happens to be true.
Yeah. So
I can't buy Dwayne enough ice creams to cover him for that.
Yeah, I owe him steak and a few other things, but actually he owes me a steak. But the point is, we need a lot of people involved. The time consumption is huge. Roy and I still work. Dwayne still works. We're not independently wealthy, but this is important stuff. Our government is not our friend. They are cheating. They're cheating here in Utah.
It's both Democrats and Republicans. So don't get it in your head that it's like one party or another. It is both parties.
No, it's across the board. The uniparty, call it what you want. The people in power cheat. And many of them are willing to do just about anything to stay in power. So we need volunteers for time. And I know a lot of you are there, have been standing by because we've been doing data sorts. We will be using you. We need people to do research from their computer if you can't get out and about. And then we need people to go knock on doors when we have fine-tuned our lists to where we feel it's relevant to go talk to a live person to find out more information.
The purpose of all this high-end data stuff that Dwayne and I are doing is to narrow the list of people that we actually send out to knock on doors, so that when you knock on a door, there's like at least a 50% chance that there's something fishy going on there. You out of the 15 that we found using this automated searches and stuff, how many were,
there's 2 out of the 15. There was a duplicate, so it brings it
14.
down. Yeah. And then 2 of them I have yet to make contact with. So let's call it 12 or 13. I think we're going to end up with 5 to 6 death certificates. And why I already got a couple. And when I say that's death certificate, that's relevant when I ask for that. That completes the loop of fraud. If we show that a person is voting, that has died, and we can confirm it with next of kin, and that's part of the reason that we're going to the actual house, to get it from the word of mouth from the next of kin. And I've actually asked them to send me the death certificate so I can verify it, which they have gladly done. I'm still waiting for a couple out of this first batch. Once we have those, that is a case file for us.
Each person is a case file.
Each
with all
person,
that
yes.
information.
And so as we gather these, the others, before I move on from that, the others that, a couple I've confirmed that they, in fact, the death date was wrong in the voter rolls, that they'd in fact.
Actually, it was in the search of the Find a Grave and other databases.
Well, and in some cases, when I went to the door, they said, no, that's not right. My dad died last year.
Yeah, I know. That's my point, is since the Social Security database does not give us the date of death for the hit that we've gotten in that,
Right.
we don't know whether that person that we've, that confirmed that is dead is actually the person who's at the door. That's part one. And part two, they don't give us the death date anyway. And when we go and find it online.
So the Find a Grave gave us some dates.
The wrong date. It gave us
the wrong dates, I guess is the point.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them were accurate. Some of them were not. So some of them were cases of fraud. Others, the date was inaccurate. So we had to throw that one out because the individual had recently passed away and did not vote past that death date. So we can scratch that one off the list. But like Roy said earlier, we are looking for the needle in the haystack, and we're finding them. They are there.
And we want to make sure that when we send out volunteers to go knock on doors, again, that the likelihood that we find somebody there with something wrong is very, very high. So we're trying to get like a hit rate of at least 30% to 50% hit rate.
And that's about where I was over the weekend. But it's time consuming. I think the people that are, keep in mind too, this is in the public and private categories. If we had the withheld category of voter, game over in a week. We're searching for these people in the categories that they're actually letting us see. So they're cheating even outside of the withheld category.
Can I add a little piece to this about the withheld?
Yes, sir.
We just got fresh data that one of our people purchased, and this is the data that has almost 2 million voters in it. Okay, now the actual withheld records are in there, but there's no data in them. There's a little bit of data, and of the almost 2 million, I found 300,000 withheld voters. That would make a difference in any election. 300,000 voters.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
And
it works out statewide to about 16%. So.
And that's in that specific database that you have. That snapshot in time, if you will. But explain what was in that withheld category, Dwayne.
Well, I'm not sure what you're looking for about the withheld, but
no, I'm saying, was there any usable information in the withheld?
There is some
in the actual data.
There is some data. I don't have names. I don't have any emails or phones, of course.
Okay, so you don't
but
have.
I do have addresses. I do have addresses.
Okay, so we have an address. What can we actually do with that?
Not a whole lot.
I guess we could take it and put it in the.
We can go backwards, but it's really
well, and you can take those addresses and see if there's someone who has a change of address. I mean, there's no age or birth date in there, so we don't know how old they are.
We could use
person.
We could use the county tax records, go in the address, and figure out who lived there.
Does it say who voted? Whether they voted?
I think I have voter history for those. Okay.
That would be helpful.
So it tells me whether they voted or not, but it doesn't help because we don't know who they are.
But we know
that's as designed.
More than one person living, could be more than one person living at that address.
Indeed.
So if we were to see, for our listeners here, people watching this podcast, what you're watching is making sausage. Nobody likes to watch sausage being made, but they like eating it. But
what I like to relate it to is we're mining for gold. We got this bucket of dirt, and there's big rocks, and there's smaller rocks, and there's sand, and somewhere in there there's gold, and that's what we're looking for.
Right. So going back to this, if we were to go and if you were to look at addresses in that withheld category in this new database, there's two different sorts that we could do later on after we do this other sort that we've been talking about. First thing, you go and you say, is there anybody in the other categories that are living at that same address? Because you could have a husband who's in the withheld category or not. So you could kind of get an idea of if somebody's living there. Then you can ask who is, I think with the county tax records, the tax assessor records, you can go backwards from that address and figure out who lives there, right?
Yeah.
And if you could figure out who lives there and you can compare it to if there's anybody else in the private or public categories in those other voter rolls that we have, we can then narrow down and see who's this withheld person, or if there is even a withheld person that's there.
Yeah. So I think
Dwayne, does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I mean,
It's
there's
super
a whole bunch of, there's a bunch of paths we go down to sift through this data to find the gold. Okay, so yes.
All right. Well, we're getting a little technical, but
Yeah,
I think,
I didn't really mean to interrupt you with that. I just wanted to let you know that.
no. I think it's good that we're letting people know what's involved with this process, because it's tedium and it's cumbersome.
And it's really designed to, again, give our end volunteers that are going to go knock on doors the ability to have a list where the hit rate is going to be between 30 and 50%. Whereas if we didn't do that, what would end up happening is, you might get a hit like 1 in 100 or 2 in 100 or 3 in 100.
Yeah, and we don't want to be driving around.
Really, from the 10,000 foot level, we get 2 million voters. 300,000 of them we don't know anything about, or we know a little about. And what we're looking for is, 1, people who've died, and 2, people who've moved out of state, but they're still voting on our rolls.
Right.
That's the basis of it.
Yeah, those are the two main things right now that we're looking for, and we're trying to, we're not searching for 20-year-olds. We're searching for 90-year-olds that might have died.
On the dead people side.
On the dead people side. On the moving, that would be everybody. Yeah, for sure. But and I just want to reiterate that not everybody's going to go knock on doors. We need people sitting behind computers as well, just sifting through data. And sometimes these searches, as we said, miss people. So there's going to be certain searches that we'll want to do manually. It'll be interesting to see how this AI program comes back and what it's able to pull up. Supposedly going across the entire web, pulling out information on obituaries, newspapers, Ancestry.com.
But what's interesting is the gentleman who said he was going to write that ChatGPT script. Some podcast I saw today, was just listening to while doing something. The person was doing research on voter laws, election laws.
Oh.
And he was asking a very simple question about election laws on all 50 states, like what was allowed. It's just like really a cut and dry answer. And ChatGPT wouldn't allow him to ask the question, or he could have asked the question, but it wouldn't respond at all. Why? Because that's a program that's written by Google, and they don't want to support conspiracy theorists. It's really truly unbelievable. And when my friend who said he was going to write this script, he goes, I'm going to have to write this script. I'm going to have to find a way to trick it.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to find a way to trick it. So it's really amazing how high tech the mainstream media, not mainstream Utah, but the mainstream media and our politicians, our government, is really all aligned against the people.
Oh, yeah.
It really is. I mean, because, those people that own Google, it's worth a lot of money. And the U.S. government tells those guys what to do, like who to censor and so on. I mean, that's That's what Elon Musk published with the the internal emails after he bought Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not 100% hopeful with ChatGPT, given what my friend said, because he said he's going to try and trick him.
Well, we're willing to try just about anything, and if by God, if we have to go through it all manually, we will. But we're going to try
to do as much automated as possible,
That's
so
right.
that we can spend our time going to knock on doors.
Well, but not everybody can knock on doors, and a lot of people can and want to help. And we will have lists of additional research that need to be done on individuals. And
Well, there was one file that, when we first did that sort in on the 2020 data that I had, there were 300 and how many people that were 211 years old?
there was almost 300, and it was either 46 or 66 one. Yeah,
350.
yeah, there you go.
350 people that all were born on
9/9/1809, September 9th, 1809, making them at the time of the 2020 election 211 years old. So they would be 200, and we actually have they'd be 215 today, which obviously we know is not possible. And so we don't know what to think of this category. Here's some weird things about it. Every person was born on that day in that year. Every person voted by mail or absentee. Nobody voted in person in every single election
since
all the way up, except from 2004 when we have voting records.
That's right.
All the way to 2020, because we've not added that additional search in to see if they voted. I think we got an updated voter roll that shows people that have voted up into 2024 primaries,
Yes.
Right? Is that the latest?
Yeah, we're going to be able to run that list of 350 odd names against the subsequent, and to see what's happened to those people.
So the data sheet that it's actually in it runs up through 2020, and every single one of them was born on that date. And we have one researcher and myself going through that right now manually to see if we can make sense of why they're all on that date. I actually talked to one of them. She was 96 years old. She gave me her actual birthday. I won't say who it is. And by getting additional information from additional people, Roy, I'm hoping that we can see some kind of a pattern as to why would these people be put in that kind of a category.
That kind of a bucket.
That kind of a bucket.
So when you talk to the son, because you spoke to
I did talk to the son in that case.
And you said that this woman voted, and we'll also look going forward as well.
She's 96 years old.
96 years old. Would he be able to say whether this isn't admissible evidence, but is she a frequent voter or?
According to him, she had voted up until 2020. Yeah.
Well, we'll have to see going forward what it looks like.
Yeah, he said that she did not vote in last year when they had the special election or this year in the primary. And I'm not even sure what affiliation she is, because we don't care. We have all affiliations. That's irrelevant to what we're doing. The only thing that's relevant is people are voting that shouldn't be voting, regardless of their political affiliation. So, I would think, Roy, and anybody that's listening, that anyone of any political persuasion would want to fix this problem. You think that every reasonable person would want to have fair elections, because you get cheated both ways. This time it might go in your favor, but next time it may not. And we need if we don't have free and fair elections in this country, we are not a free country. I'm sorry. We're living in the matrix.
We're in Venezuela.
Yeah, we're living in the matrix. We're living a lie. And I don't want to live a lie. Some people want to. I'm not into that. So.
You don't want to be put back into the matrix?
No, remember the one guy that killed the other person because he was promised to be inserted back into the matrix?
Yeah,
because he couldn't deal with the truth. And that's a valid point because I run into a lot of people that do not want to know the truth. They can't deal with it. They can't deal with the truth. And by the way, not everybody's happy that we're looking at this stuff.
Oh no, that's
You know,
for sure true. And you know, we were talking a little bit ago about, you know, what keeping the data, kind of segueing out of this and into something before we got to go, but because I want to talk a little bit about Tina Peters.
Oh yeah.
Tina Peters was in county, Gesundheit, was a county clerk in Mesa, Colorado, and she was running the election in 2020, and you know, as I mentioned before, when an election occurs, you're supposed to keep all the data. You're supposed to keep all the images inside the machines. You're supposed to keep the ballots. You're supposed to keep the envelopes. Supposed to keep everything. So and so that's.
Hold on, Roy. I can't help it. It's just still on my mind. I've got to get it off my mind. Dwayne, you may want to mute. If that had been a fart, I don't know what would have happened, but we may have lost a lot of viewers. So sorry. You know, I don't think Dwayne's listening to us.
No, he is. He says, "Forgot my mic was hot."
Oh.
So anyway,
anyway, sorry.
Coming.
Had to get that out of the way.
You're so sophomoric. But anyway, so Tina ran the presidential election in 2020 in November, and she was amazed at the outcome, but then but then they ran another election afterwards, like in January, February. I don't know why that happened there, but it was an election for all the county commissioners. And Mesa, Colorado, that little corner of Colorado, is very red. And she ran the election, and lo and behold, you know, the Democrats won most of the seats, including people who had just moved to Mesa County just in the last few months. So they didn't have any name recognition whatsoever. They just were running. And one of them came and told her what the results were for the election before this is the county clerk who's actually running the election, before she even knew. And he told her the number by how much he won. And when she got the official results that came from her computers, from her systems that she was running, it was exactly the number that guy gave her. It was incredible. And
boy,
he was just he was like, holy crap.
Yeah,
she said, she was like, holy crap. And she said, I've got to go figure this out. So she went and talked to the state attorney general. Her name is Jenna Griswold.
Yeah.
Jenna Griswold. And she was saying, oh, no, everything is just great. Everything is just fine. Don't worry about it. And then a couple weeks later, she said, we have to install new software on your computer. We have to do an update. It's called a trusted build. And she was using Dominion. People who are listening may have heard the name Dominion before. But anyway, she knew that if the Dominion people came in and installed this new software, that the entire hard drives of these systems, all her systems, her computers that were used to, you know, tabulate the election and take the votes and scan ballots, et cetera, all that would be lost. So what she did was she had an individual come in and take images of the computer off the computer. It's called a forensic image. It's much different than just copying a bunch of information onto a hard drive. You're actually getting all the data structures that are on the hard drive at a very, 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 very incredibly deep level. So those computers experts came in, they took it all apart. They basically took the images of these hard drives. Then Dominion came in with the state officials. She said they taped up the windows in the office in the area where the computer equipment is being held because it's in a secured location. And then after they left, they went in and she took another image of the computer systems after they had done the trusted build. And lo and behold, you know what they found, Steve?
What, Roy?
Fraud. They found fraud, and they found that the state had actually removed the data, and so they removed the evidence. They deleted the evidence. Now remember, the county clerk is supposed to keep all the data for 22 months federally, and in some cases even longer for state, like up to 24
So
months.
they're really the ones that should be on trial here, shouldn't they?
So they then prosecuted her, and the reason they got her, my understanding, and Dwayne, maybe you know better, but the reason they're prosecuting her is because she gave access to the room with all this computer equipment. She gave them her key, her magnetic key with her identity on it to get into the systems so that they can actually do all this work. And that was a breach of security, for which is what she was indicted for. Okay, and her trial is, when is her trial?
Well, it actually started earlier this week. Preliminary hearings. The actual trial, jury trial, starts on Thursday or Friday. And then it's scheduled to go out for a couple of weeks. But we wanted to make sure that she gets the support she needs. She's a patriot. Both Roy and I have met her personally, and we want to give out some information about Tina Peters. If you're watching this podcast, Dwayne has put the information up on the screen, but for those of you that are just listening, please take out a pencil and paper, and write down freetinapeters.com. That's freetinapeters.com.
One word.
And actually, no, I said that incorrectly. freetina.com.
Yeah, I was going to say freetina.com.
Freetina, TINA.com. She's having a fundraiser. The legal expenses are huge. None of us could bear that burden on our
It would
shoulders.
bankrupt anybody.
It's going to bankrupt her if it hasn't already. There's a big fundraiser this Sunday that Dwayne has put up on the screen. The fundraiser is in Grand Junction, Sunday, the 4th of August, and it's at 2565 American Way in Grand Junction from 4 to 7 p.m. It's going to be a dinner. It's going to be a concert. You can go on the website, freetina.com, and find out all the information about that. Or you can just go onto that website and donate. There's going to be a couple of good guests, Mark Fitcham and Altman. What's his first name?
Joe
Altman will be there. And whether you go to it or not, I think that we should all dig deep as we can, give what we can, because it all helps by going to freetina.com and following the prompts there to donate to her cause, because she stepped out, and she's a Gold Star mom too, I believe. Is that correct, Dwayne? I think she's a Gold Star mom as well.
That is correct.
That is correct. That is correct. Her son died in an accident when he was at after he'd enlisted in the military. So.
Yeah, he's a Navy SEAL, I believe.
We got so many people that are willing to step out and help, but and do the right thing, like Tina Peters did. But they can't stand on their own. We need to back them up.
It's the way the system works. And it's how our government works. It's there to the people inside there, separate people like Tina Peters, and then they crush them.
They crush them. And we need to be there. Otherwise, we're not going to save this nation. So, freetinapeters.com to either buy a ticket to this fundraiser or just donate to her legal expenses. And on that website is a schedule of her trial and a lot more information that you can find out about her. Dwayne, is there anything that you'd like to add about Tina?
Well, the other two people that you'll see if you go there are, Steve and Dwayne, right here.
Yes, I was going to say we're going to be there. Steve and I will be there.
Yeah.
We'll be there on Sunday.
So don't let that scare you away. No, we want to go support her. And by the way,
all the help she can get. She's been canceled. The cancel culture has gotten to her.
I think the probability that she gets convicted on this thing is 90%, and it's not because
she was accused of a security violation, which she did. Okay.
Which she did.
Unknowingly. She was just trying to protect the data. That's what she was trying to do. And, she gave someone her security card, and that's what they've arrested her for. That's what she's been indicted for, is a security violation. And she's probably going to jail.
Probably going to go to jail.
Well, and I would add that even if she was found not guilty, the financial burden's going to crush her anyway.
Would have crushed her without the support.
Well, yeah, if people don't contribute to the cause, it will crush her, whether she's found guilty or not. Because that's one of the tactics they use. If you're not found guilty, they've ruined you financially, trying to defend yourself. So go to Tina, free Tina, Tina, freetina.com to get more information and hopefully contribute what you can to that cause. So, hey, we're still hoping that we get a caller or two. 385-899-2134. We're really nice guys, and we'd love to talk to you about anything really related to our government, what's going on with our national election with Trump and Kamala Harris, with the Israel situation, anything that comes to mind, or election integrity, which we are very focused on.
I forgot to mention this, but in Venezuela, with the election there, and Maduro, who's the current president who fraudulently took this last election.
Now, hold a sec. Wait a second. Either I have dementia or you have it, because I swear we talked about this to start the show.
We did. However, I forgot to mention the following.
Okay.
Maduro, like Elon Musk was saying, it's clear it's fraud. And then Maduro came out like the little tin pot dictator that he is, and said, Elon Musk is a wimp, and and I'm going to make him go away, and basically challenged him to a fight. So then Elon Musk tweeted back, "I accept." He accepted a fight to do a fight with Maduro.
Can they meet in Mexico or something?
Well, what I think is going to happen is that Maduro is going to just wimp out. That's what I think he's going to do. However, what I'm hoping is going to happen, do you know who Dana White is?
Oh, yeah, the UFC guy.
Dana White should announce, I will host the fight.
Yeah.
And we will host it at this location, and then we'll have tickets. That would make it. I'm sure that Elon would be, yeah, let's do that. And then
You would.
And then Trump would go.
Yeah, Trump would go.
Trump would go, and Maduro would have to find a way to back out because Elon Musk is younger and he's big. That dude's a big dude. I think he could probably beat Maduro. Maduro is.
Yeah, well, he's big and fat.
He's big and fat.
I think we have a caller, actually. Dwayne, is that true?
But I wanted to get that in there about Elon.
Yes, that looks like it's true. Hold on, let me go get him. You guys keep talking. I'll drop him in. It's
Okay.
I wanted to bring that in because man, I would pay money to go see that fight.
I would. Yeah, me too. That brings me up to.
You know what he could do? He could say, "I'll host a fight, and then I'll donate the proceeds to, the charity of choice." 50.
Lori, are you there?
You guys.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Okay, turn off your radio in the background, and I'm going to drop you in. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna walk away from my computer.
Okay, and I'll just drop you in. Hey,
Hi,
guys,
Lori.
Lori. Hang on a second.
Did you drop Lori?
Here she is. Lori, can you hear us?
I can, yes.
Hi, Lori.
Hi, Steve.
How's it going, Lori?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Uh,
we
Good.
do.
How are you?
They've got you. So go ahead and fire
Okay.
away.
Okay, so I have a question. I came into it a little bit after you started. The one question is, so I was present also at Mark Cook's event and obviously met Tina and heard her story at the Constitutional Sheriff event. Because she has got data proving that there was fraud, does she need more than what she has, or is it just big government has big money and it's a tough fight like all of us have when they start coming after us? Because you would think that with what she has and what she has proved, that she would have already been declared innocent instead of being declared guilty waiting for trial.
That's an awesome question. Okay. And it goes to something that Dwayne said a little bit ago. And what he said a little bit ago was, what she has been indicted on is a breach of security because she gave her card out and she gave it to somebody else who then went into the room. Now, the fact that those people came up with all this evidence, one of the questions that her lawyer is going to ask or try to do is try to admit that evidence into the court proceedings so that the jury could then hear and say, yes, by the way, my job as a county clerk is to collect all this data. And I knew that when they did this trusted build, that they were going to wipe out all the data and I would actually be in violation of my oath of office.
Because it's your responsibility to keep it for 22 months, according to law.
And when we did that, we found that all this fraud, and a judge who in particular is maybe looking to convict, or even a judge that is just looking to just run the process in a way that is consistent with the way they're supposed to run a process. I don't think that they would allow that in as evidence. What I do think that they would allow perhaps in as evidence, and I'm not a lawyer, but I just follow this stuff a lot. I would be surprised if they did not allow into evidence the fact that she was required to keep these data, and that when they did this trusted build, that it wiped out all the data. And then the jury is going to have to say, okay, on the one hand, she broke the law and she did a security breach by giving away her card. Check. But on the other, she actually captured all this data. And so does the fact that she was trying to follow her own rules and actually trying to counteract what the state was doing, which is going to be deleting data, does that offset the first wrong that she made? And I don't know whether the jury, which way the jury would go.
Well, it's just going to be how the judge allows them to go.
Well, not how they decide in terms of what data they're allowed in there, like what testimony.
Right. The judge is going to either allow that testimony in or not. And all we can speak to, Lori, is what we know to be true here in Utah and other places that we have researched where you have actual evidence and it's brushed aside as to having no standing or, like we've seen in so many of the cases, especially shortly after 2020 election, where they just rule that this evidence has no standing or this case has no standing in this trial, and they won't hear it, thereby, dismissing it and not seeing any of the evidence at all. And I'm afraid that that's what's
kind of similar to what they did to Trump, but since he's in a predominantly conservative town, are the jurors that she has, does she know anything that they're not transplants, I'm assuming, from, could they bring in the left side liberals for the jurors, or do you not know that?
Well, I don't think it's going to come down to the jurors. I think it's going to come down to what the judge allows the jurors to hear as evidence.
That's the key. Right. So look, let's go to Trump. Let's see, which was the one? Oh, on election fraud, not election fraud, but campaign finance violation. Remember on that trial, which he was convicted in, he wanted to bring in an expert on campaign finance laws. And the judge, Judge Mershon, would not allow that person to come in because you probably know that a whole bunch of people looked at that case and said there's nothing wrong there. He did nothing wrong. He didn't violate the campaign finance laws at all. And that was critical to the conviction of Trump by the jury. And so Judge Mershon would not allow the testimony, that guy to testify, even though Trump wanted to call this witness. They just said, sorry, you can't come in. I mean, what Tina, if in her defense, if she were to do this, would call in the people that actually came to and went into the room and took the data, and they would explain what they actually found. And going to what you were saying was, well, she didn't have the capability to kind of do all this work and computer work, so she hired these experts. That was like, what's his name, Raccoon?
The lone raccoon.
Jeff
O'Donnell. Yeah.
Bring him in, and Mark Cook bring him in, and they went and took all the data off the computer and say, I did this. She gave me the card, and I did this.
But I see personally, Roy,
I don't see the judge allowing that testimony.
I don't think he'll allow it. But from my perspective, she had a responsibility to actually do what she did. Not having the expertise herself to physically pull that data. It's like how we use Dwayne to set up and manipulate our spreadsheets and databases. I can't do it. And he's doing it for me. So we give him access to it all so he can do it. I mean, Tina,
and even Roy can do that stuff. But if you have an expert, you got a person who knows what they're doing. It just goes faster. That's all. And that's what she did. She hired people because she couldn't do a backup. She couldn't do a forensic backup. She had no idea. She's a clerk. She's a county clerk. And
not to denigrate county clerks.
No. But she's not a technology person.
No, she's not a technology person.
Well, it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't thing, because she wouldn't have been fulfilling her responsibility had she not taken steps to back up the data, which she, by code and law, is required to do for 22 months. On the other hand, by giving the security clearance or key or whatever she did to the individuals that did have that capability, she's violating that law.
Well, and what happened after she got that forensic backup, she discovered all kinds of stuff that was in there, and she
Yeah.
pulled the sheets on these people, and they're going, "Uh-oh, we got to put her in jail."
Right. So I think it's going to come down to who is this judge and is he an honest person or not?
Lori's got something else. Go ahead, Lori.
I was going to say, so the AG in Colorado, I'm not aware of him. Who is he? Is he like a good guy or is he evil?
You know, I don't know who the AG is, but the Secretary of State, this
Jenna Griswold.
Jenna Griswold, is not a.
She's a leftist.
She's a leftist. She wants to see heads roll, and she commits all the fraud in the world and wants to pin somebody, just like they're doing with Trump, pin it down onto somebody else that's just trying to do their job. And I'm not even sure, is it the state prosecuting her or the county?
It's the state.
So it would be the attorney general for the state then.
That's my understanding. It's the attorney general of the state. That's the the person who is foisting the trusted build on Tina and all the counties in Colorado was Jenna Griswold.
Because I was thinking, Lori, of a case we have here with Frank Mylar, and although he's running for state office, I was wondering why he didn't get prosecuted by the attorney general here of the state rather than the county attorney general in Sim Gill, who was actually prosecuting Frank Mylar. So I wonder what that distinction is and why one applies in one case and not the other, I guess.
It's all about the courts and the judges who decide these things, and whoever the district attorney is that files the case. And I mean, it's Philip Weiser is the Colorado Attorney General, and of course, he's a lefty. Okay, and he's been in there since 2019, and he's the one who decides what court she goes to and all of that. And it's a snake pit, is what it is.
Oh, it's just corruption at its finest. We know that because we battle it here in Utah with Spencer Cox.
Yes.
Is there an investigation into the people that destroyed the data?
It's him.
Who's that just jumped in?
Jim, is that Jim?
When Dominion came in and hi guys.
Hi, Jim.
When they came in and patched the machines which destroyed all the data, is there an investigation? Have they announced that there's an investigation into what happened and why the data was destroyed?
Or even better yet, I don't know whether you read the report from Jeff O'Donnell and then the professor down in Texas. I forget his name. They both wrote different reports because they both looked at the hard drives and the data on the hard drives separately, and they both explain the same thing: switching votes and all sorts of nefarious things going on at the machine level. And to my knowledge, Jim, there's been no case. No case has been brought. My guess is, and maybe Steve and Dwayne, when they see people there in Colorado this weekend, they can ask. But my guess is that since the data was pulled from the computer in a way that has been deemed illegal, then it's like the fruit of the poison tree. I don't know whether you ever heard something, like that in the legal space. I don't think that they can use those data and that analysis that comes from those data to prosecute the actual fraud, the election fraud itself. And in a way, if you're trying to cover this up, thinking about this out loud, if you're trying to cover this up and you're the Secretary of State, you actually want to prosecute this, not just to punish Tina Peters and any other county clerk who'll step out of line, but you want to make sure that those data can't be used to actually prosecute the real fraud. That I don't think that evidence is admissible because of the security breach.
Yeah, it's an inadmissible evidence. It's the data's tainted. Stolen. It's stolen data.
Well, but the other side of that argument, though, or the way I would look at it is, yeah, I understand the fruit of the poison tree. So they got the data illegally, so you can't use it to prosecute somebody for the crimes they committed. However, they still haven't explained to anybody what happened to the data.
Yeah. Well,
and that's, Jim, that's quite honestly, that's true everywhere we look.
Data.
Yeah, and that's true in that case, and it's true here too. When we present, and Roy and others have presented raw data to the highest election officials in the state, and they're simply dismissed and called insurrectionists and conspiracy theorists. And you try to bring it through the court system, and you're dismissed for no standing. And this has happened over and over again.
Which is why.
Go ahead, Jim.
Go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
Well, that's okay. One of the things that you might want to look at is that somewhere there's a standard for those machines. There's the golden image, or whatever you want to call it, which is the standard by which all Dominion machines should be in the state of Colorado. There's a document somewhere, there has to be, that says this is what is allowed on the machine and this is what's not allowed on the machine. And I saw the utilities that a programmer would use to get access to the back end of the SQL data in some of those presentations that I had seen. So that's something that might be beneficial to her, is to be able to show that, hey, but I'm just saying that, you know, my wife is telling me that Mark's going to testify for him, but the fact that the programming tools to get into the back-end database were on that machine is absolutely got to be against whatever document was drafted that said this is how the machines would operate and what's allowed on them.
I think all of us here
have to be accountable for that.
I agree. All the people here on this immediate conversation would agree with you that the election officials, not Tina, but the at the state level, are culpable. But I think that the fact that the only reason that Mark Cook and some of these other people would actually know that those things are on the machine is because they got access from Tina, and they shouldn't have gotten that. And that's where the original, you know, so I don't think that evidence can be brought in for anything. It's one of the things that we, Steve and I and Dwayne and a bunch of other people, what we're trying to do is, I don't know whether you heard the earlier part of the conversation, but we're trying to find election fraud that is, you know, unimpeachable, like dead people that voted and getting death certificates, etc. And we believe that if we submit those cases to the county commissioners, who are the board of canvassers, and the county clerks, and say, look, and this is happening in other counties across the country, say, look, you're violating my rights under the law because you're not giving me equal protection. If you run the system like this again, an election system like this again, you're knowingly violating my rights because you don't have control over the data in the system. You don't know, you weren't able to protect me before. So if you do it again, and I find out that this happened again, I will go after your bond. And what we found is that people, you know, the insurance companies will not cover that cost, and you can actually bankrupt a county clerk or a canvasser.
So I know, Jim, a lot of people missed we had some technical difficulties on the podcast, I think, Roy, that we should just summarize again what we're doing here with our effort.
And it's actually, to be clear for everybody, before we do that, we're patterning after something that Dr. Frank and a bunch of other people around the country, according to Dr. Frank, it was like 49 states.
Yeah, and they've actually gotten counties, specific counties in California and other states to go to paper ballots, 1 day of voting, in person, voter ID, hand counted. That's the ultimate goal of what we're trying to do. And I think if we get there, that would necessitate rewriting much of the current election code that exists in Utah, which is an absolute mess. So we have gathered 4 separate data sets, if you will, 4 separate snapshots in time of our voter rolls here in Utah. One of the things that Dwayne is doing is he's taking these
Massive files.
And it's important to note that if I ask for do a grandma request for a voter roll on November 3rd, the day of election, which you're unlikely to get, it's a snapshot in time of that day. By the next day, that voter roll is changed. So every time you get a voter roll, it's a different set of data. Much of it's the same, but a lot of it has changed. So we're merging the different sets of data or voter rolls that we have to compile one massive list of voter data. We're then screening that or running it through as one of our tests through the COA, the Cause of America, Mike Lindell group, which uses various tools to determine who on this list has died and when. So that was our first subset of data based on older individuals, starting with the lower hanging fruits. We've taken that and distilled it down to where we can actually go physically to the doors of houses and find the owners and ask them, and with the idea of acquiring death certificates, which is irrefutable proof that and I'll say that, you know, we're only going to the doors of the people we find that are still voting after they have died. So we're able to distill it down. This weekend we had a list of 15. I went to 15 houses, and out of the 15, it looks like we're going to find about 6 to 8 people that have died and
voted
and that the families, we have to get in touch with the families, next of kin, so they can obtain an actual death certificate. You have to be next of kin to do that. Not just anybody can walk in and obtain a death certificate. And quite honestly, the people that I've talked to are very upset that somebody has stolen their deceased father's identity and continues to vote for them. And in one case, the father had moved in 2005, didn't die until 2012, moved to Arizona, but he's been voting since 2005 in Utah and Arizona. So he not only died, he didn't even live in Utah. And so that guy is, yes, I'll send you the death certificate. So that's an individual case of fraud, irrefutable. We have the death certificate and we have the proof from the county itself or the state voter roll records that show this person has voted, but they couldn't have because they're dead. So that's the kind of evidence we are getting here. And then doing the same thing with people that have moved and are still voting here. That's kind of a summation of what we're doing. And it's gone slower than we had hoped. We're having to pay for a lot of the data searches that we're having done. because there's millions of records and it would be virtually impossible to go through it by hand. Although we've done some of that, and we are making progress, and death certificates are starting to roll in.
And at some point soon, we're going to go out and ask a broad group of people, because there's one big data search that we want to do across 7 different counties that would actually turbocharge this search. Now that we have all the data in the database that actually Dwayne has put into the database after hundreds of hours,
Literally
we can
hundreds of hours.
We can then do a very, very, very thorough search. But that searching those data is going to cost probably about $15,000-$20,000.
Yeah, you guys have some other stuff that you're going to be doing with change of address and things like that, and some of those checks cost a lot of money.
Yes, we know.
Well, and thank goodness that Mike Lindell has paid for some of it, but there's another level that we're going to do. We'll have to see. We might be able to get enough people in Salt Lake County where we don't have to redo Salt Lake County, and then we can cut that probably about by a third to half. But I really want to expand the search to these other counties.
Yeah.
All right, gents. I'm gonna bail on you. You guys are welcome to continue for as long as you want. Okay.
I think we're gonna wrap it up too.
It is.
Yeah, Jim and Lori, if you're still there, thank you very much for calling in.
Yes, thank you very much.
You guys are true patriots.
Yeah, we cut them loose, but like I said, you guys are welcome to continue, but I do have to go. It is 6. So.
Okay, no worries.
Thanks,
We got to keep you fed so that you can keep doing your data sorts.
Okay. Thanks, guys. I'm out of here.
Bye-bye.
Well, yeah. See you, Dwayne. And hey, I think we're going to wrap it up too. 6 o'clock. We got other things to do. We're getting ramped up again, though. Our new name is the Battle Station, because we truly are at war. And we are in our battle stations, and we are fighting back in every way and every which way we know how. And we would very much appreciate your support and help, volunteer and or financial support, because these things do cost money, the data searches, etc. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And we'll see you next week. 4 o'clock.
Same bad time, same bad channel.
Exactly.
Channels.
KMMU.org, MainStreetMediaUtah.com. You can find us on Rumble. You can find us on X just by doing a search for KMMU and YouTube. Yeah. So thank you, everybody. You have a great evening and a great rest of your week.
Bye-bye.